Hello, Internet. Thank you once again for joining me to talk all things vertical drama. I have found another wonderful person to talk to, and that is the wonderful and lovely Marie Rouhban, which I think I've got the pronunciation right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask Marie now to introduce herself to you and explain a bit of what she does, because Marie is very much a person who is behind the camera rather than in front of it on a vertical set.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen, for having me and also shedding some lights onto the people that are behind the camera. My name is Marie, and I am a Los Angeles-based director. I moved to LA about 4 years ago for a career switch. I used to work in marketing, advertising, and communication, and I transitioned into filmmaking, which is what I've always wanted to do. And as the state of things are in LA, I currently work a lot on verticals. I started out mostly as a first AD, and now it's been about a year since I've mostly transitioned into directing those. That's for the short intro version.
That was amazing. That was like perfect. You've done that before, I
Thank
feel.
you.
So for the uninitiated, if you're doing another job and then you decide you want to go into filmmaking, like, do you go and study, or are you like, I just need to get practical experience? How did you get yourself into a position where you were then getting hired on set?
That's a very good question because I thought about it for a very long time, about 2 to 3 years almost. I will say it was not, I woke up one day and I was like, oh, that's it, I got to switch. But I think the thought was lingering all along. My parents, who love me, were not super supportive of me just flying off, leaving Paris and moving to Hollywood to make films when I was 18. Rightfully so. It's a very difficult industry to get in. And in hindsight, I don't think that at 17, 18 years old, I would have had the strength and the stamina it took to get into it. So I went to business school, and the deal kind of always was you just make sure you have a good backup diploma and then you can do whatever you like. But as we know, life has a way. And I just started working in companies after getting my degree in business, mostly, as I said, marketing, communications, advertising. So still within the realm of business, still the most creative aspects of it, but still very much business. And yeah, when the thought started getting into my head and I was like, I should give it a try. I think I was 27, 28 at the time. And I kept checking the boxes, having the good job, the good lifestyle and all that. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. I started exploring a little bit my options. Obviously, I could have stayed in France, which is the crib of cinema, and also a country that makes, I mean, in my opinion, very, very good films. But I think what mattered to me the most at that point was to just really, really focus on that and not have any external pressure from parents, friends. Oh, let's go out. Oh, I'm getting married. Oh, I have kids. Let's go. It was just a pressure on a lifestyle and stages in life that I knew I wasn't going to be able to bear if I really wanted to focus on that. And what better place to learn about film than move to Hollywood? And my options were, I could have moved within a company and gotten a job as marketing, strategy, advertising, whatever I used to do, and do filmmaking on the side. But I figured it would not be the best way to fully get into the water and immerse myself into this new industry that I didn't know much about aside from watching a ton of films. That's kind of been the consistent thing of my life, is just watch a lot of films. And yeah, I saved up some money to get into a small directing program here in LA. It's usually the easiest way as a foreigner to get in the country. And after you get your diploma, you get 1 year of work visa called an OPT. Not sure a lot of people are interested in that, but you get like a 1 year window to just get a bunch of experience on set. And after that, I applied for an O1 visa, which is a working professional visa that lasts 3 years, and managed to get it. So it was really, I think at first my mindset was, you're going to have 2 years, 1 year of study and 1 year of work. Just try it out. You'll be 34. Worst case, it doesn't work. You come back home and you just get a job. But if it works, I mean, at least you'll have no regret. You will have tried. But if it works, let's just see how long you can keep going. And it's been 4 years. So far it's working out. I mean, I'm very grateful of what I've been able to accomplish in 4 years. So yeah, so far, very happy with this career switch.
I love that approach, and that makes so much sense of like, if I'm going to really go for this and not get sidelined by just social life and friends and family, I need to totally remove myself. I think you're so cool for doing that. Okay, so you're working in LA. When do verticals come into your life? What was your first encounter with them?
I think the very first one was about 2 years ago, late 2023. It was not me being on a set. It was right around the time I was applying for this visa. So very much in an administrative, anxious tunnel. But I started hearing people telling me, oh, I'm working on these shows that go on the phone and that are shot directly in that aspect ratio. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. The only things that I could see shot in that format were mostly social media influencers or bloggers that would automatically start shooting content in that form. But I had never heard of anything narrative of a longer form in that realm. And so I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. And I'm not super familiar with the very first vertical, but I think the tropes were very much at their peak. A lot of people were talking about softcore porn, very much focused on unrealistic relationships, very tacky billionaire mafia werewolf narrative. And I was like, oh wow, that's absolutely wild. I don't think I could work on those because I have really no affinity with this type of narrative. And my very first working experience was about a couple weeks after getting my visa. A producer, not even a producer friend of mine, but someone recommended me to a producer as a first AD because that's also something I should have mentioned. When I graduated and when I got my working visa, it's very difficult to just straight up get work as a director because you need to practice a lot and show what you've done. People are not just, oh yeah, hey, just direct this thing for that much budget. Yeah. And so my way really into the industry and a big part of my learning journey was first ADing, first assistant director, which is pretty much the person who schedules the set, make sure everybody's on time, foresees every possible problem that could happen 17 steps ahead. Basically, you coordinate the team and you schedule ahead of time. This is pretty much what I used to do in my former life. Spreadsheets, scheduling, managing people. So this position was really the bridge between the two lives that I had. And so I started first ADing a lot. You do need to understand the set dynamics, but you just need to be a good communicator and someone who's on top of things, on top of time and organized. So that was my way into filmmaking. And it's a great way to observe the dynamics. How do people talk to each other? What matters to which department? What takes time? What's good directing? What's bad directing? How do actors want to be treated? So you're just once people are rolling, you just observe and see how people make creative decisions. And so I was recommended by someone as a first AD because that's what I had been doing for the most part as a living, in addition to making my short films on the side. And they told me, yeah, it's a vertical. Have you ever first AD'd one of those? I'm like, no, but I heard they're crazy in pacing. And yeah, he was willing to take a chance on me and give me my first vertical job. That's how I stepped onto set for the first time. And I remember when I was scheduling it, usually I give the director and the director of photography a time for each shot. Oh, for that shot, you're going to have 30 to 45 minutes to get it. And when I was looking at the times I was able to give them for each setup, it was like 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes at the most. The times were so reduced. I was like, how are we going to do this? I started freaking out in pre-production, like, how do we do this? And then you get on the set. Luckily, the DP had shot them. The production company was a little bit more experienced. And I just saw how we do things in a very efficient way. And yeah, that was my first vertical experience. And it turns out that on my first 2 vertical as a first AD, this one and the next one, the last day or couple of days, for some reason, the director couldn't be there. In the first case, she became ill and just could not direct anymore. And the second time, I think the dates got pushed. And so she wasn't able to be present on the last day. And so on those 2 very first experience, at the end of the show, they were like, "You're a director, right? Can you do this for 2 days?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess." And so I would just look at what the scene was, and those were my first directing experiences on Vertical. Just covering for a day or 2 for the director who just had to step out for various different reasons. And yeah, a few months later, I guess they liked what I did. My very first one was for Real Short as a director. My first one as a director. They liked what I second united directed on the last day. And the producers called me and said, "Do you want to do one, like a full on yourself?" And yeah, that was my very first one. That was Mommy, I Got You a Date.
Wow, I love that. Oh my goodness. That's
Yeah,
how to learn though, isn't it? When you can't think about it, you're just thrown onto it and like you have to make this happen right
exactly.
now. So I really want to talk to you about Mummy. I've got you a date because I think as you look back now, it's a really lovely vertical. So
Yeah.
I think partly all the characters have time to develop in that. Was that something you were conscious with? And obviously, people have gone on. I mean, I'd say all of them have gone on to be. They're all massive names now. I mean, you've got Autumn Noel, you've got Felix Murbach, but bringing those talents together and kind of making it all work. What were your, and also your thoughts about the storyline as well?
I was very scared. That's the thing. When I was first dating the previous one, which was Accidental Surrogate of the Alpha, also a pretty big one.
Yeah.
When I was talking to the producers, I was telling them, I don't know if I would ever be able to direct a vertical that I don't connect with the story, where I don't have any sort of bonding with what's happening. And I will say, I really do not understand anything werewolf. I don't know the rules. I don't know the code. It's not something that I connect with. And so I think that they knew that I needed something that wasn't too, I mean, it has the vertical tropes, but that wasn't too fantasy or too problematic in a lot of ways. And so I do feel very blessed that I got this as a first script because I think it was already a very good one when I got it. I think that then we were able to add the little kangaroo plush that was 100% something that I added that was not in the script that gave Maxwell a lot more dimension with the little superhero he puts in it. But I just think that we were blessed with the script to begin with, and then we were able to elevate it. I will also say, as you said, Autumn, Felix, and Maxwell are, to begin with, so good. Autumn was already a big star. She was already attached to the project before I hopped on. And then we saw a lot of different potential lead male. Felix stood out, as the best in terms of audition tapes. It was the first time also for both of them, I believe, playing parents. So the question was, how do we get them to that place? And I think it's a very loving thing. Out of all things vertical, it's a very loving thing to do, to play a parent. So they really they were really open to dive into it. And then Maxwell had already also done a couple of verticals. I don't think he had been in. So he is quite central. He's literally Mommy, I Got Your Date. He's the person speaking the title. So I don't know if he had ever been in something so central with that many days of shoot, but he was so. I could not believe how professional he was. Sometimes I would try to give him directions. So at that point in the story, that's your back thought. That's what you're thinking. He would finish my sentence and be, yeah, because blah, 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 blah. He would completely nail and understand the characters so well. So him and Obi, his mom, were also so helpful in the process of bringing these characters to life. I do believe that it's one of the least problematic ones in terms of content that I did. It's such a sweet story, mostly consensual. There's a little bit of a push. The lead character is going to push a little bit and she says no, and then he keeps pushing and then she says yes, which is always a little but sure, we still understand the dynamic between the characters. I loved what we did with the dad, with the actor circus. I think even visually, I think that there's something very, I will say, there's something very special about your first vertical because you're not yet numb to how fast it has to be. And I think it was the first one. Mommy, I Got You a Date was the first one for our producer, for our cinematographer, Simon, who became by the end the cinematographer I work with the most. And it was my first one. So 3 of the most key department head, it was our first one. And I think we really wanted to make it the best version it could, even if it meant extra stress on set, taking extra time to light it well. We were very blessed that Autumn, Maxwell, and Felix all knew their lines. I think that's a big thing. When the actors know their lines, it really allows us to take more time to light it properly, to get the good shots, because we know once they'll be in front of the camera, they're going to deliver. And so, yeah, I think Mommy, I Got Your Date will still, to this day, it still is the vertical I like the most that I did, that I look back with the most. I don't know. I just, it feels very special. There's something very special about it.
That's really interesting what you were saying about obviously knowing the lines, because one of the things people talk about is obviously it's generally so short, the prep time, and that you're on set, you often get a script very late, you're on set, you're working long days. So as well as lines, just building those relationships, you haven't got weeks and weeks of pre-rehearsal or anything. So kind of are there ways that you found that will help kind of actors and everyone come together pretty fast? It's kind of the special what helps with that?
We do always get a fitting for the most part. There's one time I didn't get a fitting, which turned out to be a little bit of a problem. But usually you get a fitting. So even if there's no rehearsal per se, you get some alone bonding time with the actors, at least half a day, sometimes a little more. I think that helps a lot. I also like to create, I need to go through the agent, but I like to create a group chat with the actors where I send them, hey, here's a little clip from whatever movie I'm thinking could be a good inspiration for that. So I really try to get, I think that just in general, not just with actors, but I really try to be a good people person and to feed all the creative everything that I can to give them inspiration. And so having this little group chat, and even at the end of the day, tell them in this group chat, thank you so much for such a great day, sending them a couple of pictures. You guys look awesome. Really trying to create that bond even before set. And the first minute you step onto set, I think is really key. There's something about actors that is, I mean, I'm in awe of how vulnerable their position is, because it's very easy for the rest of us to just hide behind the camera. We all work very hard to make it look good, but at the end of the day, the face and the thing that people remember and care about the most is really the actors. So the fact that they put a lot of trust in us. They put a lot of trust in the script and in the writers. They put a lot of trust in everyone behind the camera to make them look good and to, I don't know, they're just embodying these characters that go through a lot, not just in verticals, but just in general. It's a very vulnerable position to be in. And so I try to also be very vulnerable when I direct them. I'm thinking about Autumn because she's probably the actress with whom I bonded the most and with whom I stayed friends afterward. And I still see her outside of set. And I think that sometimes when we were talking about what her character went through, I felt very comfortable sharing with her some of the things from my life that made me think of that situation, which are often very personal because all things verticals are love and betrayal and never very fun things that you want to re-dive into. And so I think that not every actor is open to that, but I've been very fortunate to have, for the most part, talent with whom I could be vulnerable and share things with. And likewise, we really enter into conversation that are interesting and vulnerable. And that's the same with the DP. Honestly, that's the same with a lot of people involved on set. If you want to create something and bring emotions to the screen, you can't just be a robot. Even though verticals kind of want you to be that because of how fast they go, you need to be able to put some sort of vulnerability on the table and be open about how you would feel about that situation, what would go through your mind. And it's just you have to be sensitive and you have to be mindful of people's feelings, and creating a safe space where everybody feels allowed to do that, I think, is the key with the actors for sure. But I would say I try to really extend that to everyone, including the producers, sometimes the client when they're on set. You have to be able to talk about feelings and to talk about what's happening emotionally, internally, to put that onto the screen, to, translate that into the screen.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to pick on something because you were mentioning that you as well as obviously actors, you've got certain crew that then you work with, and you've worked with more than once. Presumably that helps all the process because you have that level of trust, you understand how each other works, and you develop, I guess, a shorthand of communication. Is that quite common, do you think, that people end up as a little, right, if I'm on a vertical, I'll bring this person and this person just because we know we work really well as a team and we can put things together easier?
Absolutely. I can't speak for every director because I don't always track who they work with, but I think a lot of, and it goes both ways really. But each time I get brought onto a project, I will always try to put the list of the people I work with. Simon definitely is going to be top of the list with the DP with whom I work. But he's also the last one we did together. He got hired first and he's the one who brought me on. So I think knowing that you can trust them from of course, an emotional standpoint, because we became friends outside of set, but also knowing that they're going to deliver. You trust their work ethics. You know they're going to work hard. You know their teams because department heads also have teams. Simon often comes with the same group. It rotates because we're all busy at different times, but he has his pool of camera and G&E people, of like the same 10 people who kind of rotate on every set. You know they're working well. It brings an excellent atmosphere on set because everybody knows each other, but it's the same for the production designer. They're going to have their art director, their art PAs, same for the makeup artists and their assistants. I think the vertical universe just became a very, very big family, and you kind of pick your favorite cousins, the relatives with whom you get along the most, and you try to bring them on as often as you can. Also the case for actors, I will try to push on the table the actors that I like working with the most. I will say I don't get as much of a say for talent. Sometimes the actors are locked even before I get onto the project because the writers have a very specific person in mind that they're imagining, a very specific vibe they want to go for. But for the crew, I will definitely try to bring on as many people as I know as possible, just because of trust, as you said, but also just it's smoothen everything in the filmmaking process. Everybody knows each other, and knowing the job will be done from every department and everything will collide and Tetris kind of perfectly is just, you get to set with that amount of stress with that much less amount of stress. So that's a big win.
I just want to ask as well, as a female director, what is the proportion, do you reckon, of female directors within verticals? Because obviously we know the audience is largely female. I'm just wondering.
I want to say there are more. I wouldn't be able to tell you the proportion, but I feel like I'm hearing more of female directors. I'm going to throw a number, but I'm not sure it's the case. I want to say 65% at least of women. I'm a little biased because each time I've been put onto a project to work at least as a first AD, it was for the most part female directors. I think female directors prefer to have female first ADs. So I'm also biased because I've mostly witnessed female filmmakers. And I think that on a lot of projects that I get brought on, they tell me we want a female director for that. We want to have, so female DPs, I want to say are a little less frequent, but sometimes they'll try to get a female B cam up for the second camera. Even though the DP is going to be male, they try to have at least a feminine eye to kind of give, a lot of it is, of course, there's a lot of sex or sexual tension in verticals. And I think that having a female eye, at least one, helps a lot, just to make sure that it's as tasteful as it can be, because the script not always gives us the liberty to be respectful, but if we can try to, at least when we shoot it, make it as respectful as we can, as tasteful. And I think even when I've worked with male DPs, there's always intimacy scenes are not at all sexy on set. It's a lot of choreography, and really, once we're blocking, the camera always is looking at the wall. I really have DPs who are when we're placing legs and things like that, an accident can happen. They're always wearing modesty shorts to make sure nothing's seen, but sometimes there is going to be we spread the lid a little more than we want. I always have DPs who are never looking and who are very, very respectful of that. I think that is absolutely key. I've never been on a vertical, either as a director or as a first AD, where intimacy has gone bad. I think we've always managed to create something that felt safe. I know it happens sometimes and it's absolutely awful, but it is key to just make sure that you create a positive atmosphere on set on all counts. And even more so as a female director, when we treat with intimacy stuff and intimacy violence. To this day, the scene from Mommy, I Got You a Date, where her landlord, I don't know if you remember when her landlord tried to force himself on her. To this day, it's still my most violent experience as a director, directing an intimacy scene. Bryn, who was our intimacy coordinator on that set, really killed it. I think she came up with that shot where he forces his legs into Autumn's legs, which is, when you think about it and when you see it, it's absolutely awful to shoot. It's actually pretty easy because he can be kind of far. It's just a leg. But I think she really managed to de-dramatize the situation in the way we were shooting it. But for sure, those scenes are the worst. I think shooting intimacy between two partners who want to be with each other is, when it's supposed to be hot and steamy, it's a little more, it can be tricky, but it's a little more fun. Everyone's a little more at ease. Shooting sexual assault stuff is quite uncomfortable. It's never a joy and a pleasure. And so I think it's very important to bring on good energy on set, create a safe space, take the time. That's also a big thing. We have so little time to shoot these, and you can't rush a sexual assault shoot. So you really need to plan ahead of time, enough time to block it, to make sure you have a conversation. I've been on situation where sometimes some people from the team didn't want to watch it. And I get it. It's it screams. Sometimes I hear the actor scream and I'm like, I don't want to be hearing this. It's very intense. It's very, very intense. And yeah, it's one of those, I wish we had to shoot a little less. But yeah, I've been fortunate on all the sets I've been on, either as a director or as a first AD. But yeah, we try to be mindful.
Because one of the things that I think fans find hard is there is, not all, but there's certainly an area where scripts seem to be just ramping it up with all of that, ramping up the violence, ramping up sexual content, in particular sexual assault. Is that something you see coming through? Is it something that we can work against? Because I know that one of the things is people are watching it. So if it gets clicks, people are watching it. This is money.
Yeah, I think that's what it is at the end of the day. I think that whatever gets clicked will be utilized as much as we can. And so I wouldn't say personally, I still think Mommy, that scene from Mommy, I Got You a Date is the most, sexually speaking, it's the most violent thing I've had to shoot. The very last, I can't say much about it because we just finished shooting it a couple weeks ago, but the last one I shot was really violent. It was not sexual violence. We didn't even need an intimacy. There's not even a kiss, I believe. We didn't even have any intimacy, but it was just, there's a lot of abuse, a lot of physical and emotional abuse in that one. It turns out the set was so fun, so smooth. The cast was, I really can't say a lot about it. I'll be happy to comment on the YouTube video. That was the one I was talking about, but right now I can't say much. The cast was just incredible. Such a professional lead actress who just took it all in a very positive way. All the tears were fake and she was killing the emotional beats each time. And the abusers were also made it very fun in between takes. So it went very smoothly, but I'm not going to lie. When I read the script for the first time, I was like, this is absolutely awful. it turns out we really made it fun on set. I almost want to say it was my most fun and my most smooth set so far. But I wouldn't say it. I think the abuse happens more. I wouldn't be able to tell you that the sexual violence is ramping up, but the abuse for sure. And I think it really, I hear, and that's why you're one of the, I think you're the only fan page I follow, because I see what you post and what your community posts and how fed up you guys are with this. I think that it all comes down to you. Not you personally, but just the audience and what you guys click on. If you stop clicking on the emotional abuse bait, they'll stop doing them. And I understand the appeal. Literally, the one I just told you about, I was watching it yesterday because I had to give notes on the edit. So I was sent the cut, and my boyfriend was next to my shoulder, and he was watching the abuse, and he was like, "This is insane. Why are they doing this to her?" And I was like, and it keeps ramping up, and he could not look away. And he's not at all into this type of content, but he was like, I can see the appeal. There's an appeal for everything violent. And I'm not gonna say I'm any different because I'm a big horror fan. I watch a lot of horror and thrillers, so I am drawn in a way to horrific things. But I wouldn't say I'm drawn to physical and emotional abuse in that regards. But I think if you guys, if the audience, if there's no more clicking onto the abuse stuff, they'll start doing them less and less. And I can tell that even though they're ramping up, there's also a counter movement. And I think you've touched base on it in a few days ago or a few weeks ago. There is also an alternative movement of elevated verticals that's also being created. I was only ADing, but a few days ago, also can't say anything about it, but I just worked on one. And again, earlier this summer, I just worked on one where really you can feel that people are changing the game. There are no coercive sexual encounters of any sorts. Of course, there are stunts and punches every now and then, but nothing as bad as it can sometimes be. What also really bothers me is abuse towards kids. That's something that I can't. I don't know why.
Frank, because there's areas where we're getting a lot more abuse towards kids, abuse towards disabled people, abuse towards it's bad. And I know the people say to me like, "Oh, you don't like anything violent," and it's like, well, look, I sat through a lot of seasons of Walking Dead. Like, I can cope with violence. For me, it's about what is the purpose of it. Like, where are we going with this story? So for me, it's like, if you then there's a bit, but then it sets up that then there's a really strong redemption, and that's different.
Exactly.
Just when it's unremitting. Does that make sense? I think that's the worry, that everyone's like, oh, you can't cope with violence. It's like, I'm not saying no violence, because like I know every story has to have something to overcome. That's the whole point. And I think that's why we're at Vertical Dramas. People want to see good overcome bad. But I think does it actually serve a story? And I feel that some of them are going to the places of like, that's there for clickbait. We know that. That's
100%.
Clickbait. It's not there as a... So I think that's just hopefully divergence, and hopefully we lose that. We move towards stuff where it's like, actually this is developing a story and this is a plot point, and then there's some more interesting things happen, and then the characters are rounded, and, you know, the villains have more to them just than they're really mean. You know, that's another thing.
And I can tell
the difference, doesn't it? Like, have they actually got a backstory, or is it just they're a horrible person? It's more interesting.
Yeah.
If they've at least got a reason. You're like, okay, well, I can kind of see their point, you know?
And I think that it makes at least on me, it makes a big difference when I go home and I haven't shot just a bunch of horrible scenes. It makes a big difference on the morale of everyone. And I think when we touch on to getting abusing children or disabled people, even though it's play pretend, I don't think a child should ever hear those words coming from an actor. Sometimes it's very, you should never have been born, you're an awful, like, even if it's play pretend, I don't think anyone should hear that. I mean, especially at a young age, because I think that actors, they're only method acting. Actors just, they feel, they just feel, they just show what they're feeling as child actors. So it's very difficult to tell them, pretend like this is all wrong, that this is all wrong and this is not true, but act, I don't know. I think that, this part of I mean, just the whole, I'm going to say the whole child actors in LA sometimes can be, you have very good parents and very protective, but sometimes it can be a little like, who knows how much the actors really want to be on set? How healthy is it to be on set for that many hours and to witness kidnapping and screaming and all that? Like, I don't know. It's just working with children can sometimes be a slippery slope. I've been very lucky so far with everything that I've worked on, but I know it's not always the case. So yeah, that's also something to be mindful just for the creative. Like, yes, it's a job and yeah, we want to make money, but we also don't want to lose our soul and our sanity working on things that are hurting us. I think that, it can be hurtful.
You've put that perfectly. I think that's the thing. Yes. We want to make money, but not at the cost of our soul and our sanity. That's I'm going to use that. Thank you for that. That is absolutely perfect. So let's be more positive because we've gone down a bit of a cul-de-sac of which we had to address. It's out there. One of the things I know you've said is that one of the great opportunities of verticals is filmmaking bootcamp. And obviously what people are really seeing is just the opportunities. Now, as obviously people talked about this, about as an industry that's kind of had COVID and strikes and fires, kind of what are the positives about verticals, about basically if you're a young either filmmaker or someone who just wants to make their way in film, kind of what is it giving people? What is it affording people?
I really think, I mean, I'm going to also speak in my personal case because I didn't go to a very fancy big film school. As I said, my filmmaking training was watching people on set to understand the dynamics, and just ever since I was a kid, watching a ton of movies, which gives me a Rolodex of references that I can pick from in terms of tropes. And these verticals are unbelievably helpful in understanding genre dynamics, scene dynamics, how to build tension, visually speaking. The scripts are there with the tension. It's not like we need, I mean, it's very much on every single page. So I wouldn't say it helps. I mean, it helps us, but I don't have it. I'm not getting anything writing training out of it, but it really helps understanding how you're going to sell an emotion, how you're going to sell an action within a few shots, a few setups. And you have such a limited amount of time to prep and to shoot that you have to go with your guts. You have to trust your instinct. After a while, your eyes get used and trained to what's going to make the cut, what's going to sell that beat, that action. And you really developed a keen eye for the things you need to get. And usually when you direct, you work, as I said, you start working on short films. Directors, just so you know, directors are usually, unless you get down the TV path, the TV filmmaking path where I guess you kind of work pretty regularly. You finish an episode, you get brought onto a new one. Directors are the people who spend the least amount of time on set because they spend so much time often writing the material, fighting to look for the money, and then in pre-production, and then you get to set, and you don't spend as much time on set as the makeup artist, as the cinematographer, as the PD. These people just make a living out of being on set. The directors, not as much. There's a lot of prep that's involved, and that makes it, they don't get as much experience. For me, not coming from a big school where I had a ton of practice, being thrown into the vertical was, I mean, I feel very blessed that I get to do them because I'm being given a feature-length script. It's like 90 to 120 pages, and we need to figure out how to shoot that in a week to 10, 12 days at the very, very most for the most intense one. That is a tremendous amount of things to get done in a short amount of time. And you need to get straight to the point. You need to figure out what's going to work. And I just feel so much more confident directing something else now that I've been working on verticals, because my brain, I mean, also directing so many actors. On one project, you direct no less than 25 and sometimes up to 40 people between the leads and all the way to the background. So you get to talk with so many different actors And I don't know. It's just, I feel very lucky that I got to do them. And I will also say, in my case, I don't come from film school. So obviously I'm being thrown into the water and just, okay, well, I guess we'll just figure it out. And I'm honestly, I see the amount of prep Simon and I did on Mommy, I Got You a Date, the amount of shortlisting. I think, honestly, it was close to between 16 and 20 hours of shortlisting, just the two of us. I don't do that anymore. It's just because we really wanted to make it extra good and we didn't know what we were doing. Now, when I get on set with him, it's so much more easier. Our brains, our eyes are trained and we're a lot more efficient. So that's for me in my case, because I don't come from a very fancy school. But I'll even say for the people who went to a very good film school where you shoot 3, 5, 6 pages a day, it's also very good. That's not the reality of filmmaking. Sure, it is the reality for Spielberg and James Cameron. But when you start into filmmaking, you don't get that much time to shoot. And so also understanding that whatever you were taught in school is not the reality of the work, I think is a good training also for these people who have been blessed with incredible working conditions during their 1, 2, 3, 4 years of study. Understanding that it's not the reality of indie filmmaking is also a great way to do it. If tomorrow I get to make my first narrative feature, non-vertical, and we don't have a giant budget and we need to shoot 6 to 8 pages a day, that's still half of what we do on verticals. So I'll feel blessed and a lot more ready than I would have otherwise. So in that regard, and for actors too, I mean, I can't speak for them, but learning that amount of pages, especially for the leads every day, I think it trains their brain. It just shows you how much you can do with how little. And I don't know. I think if you can prove that you can do a feature of that quality, because I think I do believe that we manage to get good shots and good emotions. If you manage to do it well in 10 days, who knows what we'll do when we get $1 million and 20-day shoot for a small feature. In that regards, I feel very, I don't know, it builds up the confidence, and I think it's an incredibly good experience to bootcamp your filmmaking skills.
The other thing I wanted to ask as well is, obviously I've learned sort of since starting to talk people in space that you can make these projects, this is outside the vertical world, and then they don't come out for years because you're looking for distribution.
Yeah.
And I thought, is there an advantage as well as basically anyone within that set of, like, often something will be out within a month, 2 months, and then you've got a fairly immediate audience reaction of, you know, particularly there's more and more pages like mine now, fans pages, writing reviews going, I like that, I didn't like that, this is what I loved, I like that shot. Is that an advantage as well, in that you get a much more quicker understanding of what's resonated with your audience and what people have enjoyed?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I will also say, I think verticals are still being looked down upon with a little bit of condescendence as not artistic content. I'm not going to disagree with that, because I think that a lot of the script is problematic, as we talked about. But I will also say that the more I work onto the vertical space, the more I realize that the narratives and a lot of the scenes are just the same as a regular rom-com and a regular drama. There are 3 that come to mind that I saw recently. The Last Mission Impossible, Freakier Friday, and the last I Know What You Did Last Summer. Those 3 are the 3 that came out in the last 2 or 3 months that I can think of. I was literally in the theater watching them, and I was telling my boyfriend, this is a scene I've seen in a vertical. This is it. So they're not that different. I think people like to think that they're very, very opposite. I don't think they're that different in a lot of ways. I think what makes verticals is mostly the post-production, the way they edit them, that sometimes I see how a scene is so funny, so good in real life when we shoot it, and then in the edit, they butcher it because they just cut too much. And they don't let the emotions and the jokes sink in, and they put a ton of music to let the audience know, this is how you should be feeling. This is sad. This is tense. This is what makes vertical what they are. It's not so much about the script. And so, sorry, I took a little bit of a detour, but all that to say that in terms of what you shoot and the angles you have to get, and the way when there's a stunt and someone needs to fall on the floor, you get an incredible amount of experience of what works and what's going to cut well and sell in the edit. So that's really great. On the distribution topic, I think I'm still unable to explain why some verticals do great and some verticals don't, because I think the metrics, we don't have access to the metrics, but I think it's great to sometimes see on the fan pages what worked with them, what was confusing for them. That is something that you can use in any sort of narrative material. And I will also say, from a networking perspective, I have met the most incredible people on these verticals, whether it was from the talent side or the crew. I think that we're right now at the earlier stage of our careers, but I think that the bonds and the relationships that we're creating right now are going to be even outside of the verticals when we don't necessarily work on them anymore. Some of us, and hopefully that network will also, some of the producers and the distribution company and platforms right now will maybe move on to something horizontal eventually. And these are still people who know you, trust your work ethic. So I am really hoping that the network of people and the community that we've built will all evolve together. I'm also speaking for myself on that. I really want to see verticals evolve in the right directions, and I do believe that there is a space for good content on phones. I'm going to be also very transparent. It's not really what I want to do for the rest of my career, only because I don't even watch TV. I'm a big film person. I go to the theater 2 to 3 times a week. I sat down in the theater. I like to be immersed with other people. I like the communal experience of watching a film together. If it doesn't work out in film, I'd rather do theater, plays, which I'm not sure is a better functioning industry in terms of funds. But that's my thing is the dark room. Really. And I really hope that all of us, whether we stay in the elevated vertical space, or if we go to just narrative filmmaking for theater, I do really hope that we all kind of lift each other and evolve together in this space, because the amount of talent in this industry is, I mean, I'm always in awe of what the actors bring, what the crew brings. There's a lot of nasty stuff going on too, but it's not, for the most part, at least from my experience, it's never from the people on the set, who just bring a lot of positive professional energy, and who just want to do the best they can with the material that we're given. And it's part of filmmaking. I think every era has their own verticals. I'm sure working on Days of Our Lives was also, I don't even know if it's still on, but I'm sure it was also very looked down upon. I think that every era has their beginners content, and right now these are verticals, and I'm still so happy with all the people that I've met on them, and I'm excited to see how it evolves and how we all evolve together in this space.
I think you've just summed up a lot of the reasons why I like verticals, in that I like the indie spirit. I've watched stuff over the years, that kind of students have made on YouTube, and I can forgive a lot if there's I like the story and I like what they're trying to do. There was a whole era where people were doing YouTube adaptations of classic novels and redoing it as if the central character was vlogging. So I've always been really happy to do that, and I love that kind of spirit, and I think that's where you get the creativity, because I think there's almost, not all film, but a danger with some films, that when there's so much budget and there's almost that bloat of choice, it's almost like, I think they almost get paralyzed by that. And actually you're more inventive and you're more creative when you've got limited time, limited budget, and that's when the magic can happen. So, and I would say,
go ahead. No, you finish.
I would say Mummy, I Got Your Date. That's a great rom-com that would sit alongside a lot of other rom-coms on the big screen. It's a romantic comedy.
And to add to what you were saying, I think that a lot of filmmakers, like big name filmmakers, some of their best work are their earliest film. Because I think that, as you said, when you get a bigger budget and you get to do pretty much whatever you want, you kind of lose the essential. Working on a tight budget, and that's also why I love indie filmmaking and I mean, we'll see if I'm being told wrong in 20 years, but I really hope to stay in indie filmmaking until the end because it forces you to focus on the essential and on what you can do with what you have. And you overthink every choice and you really end up making the right one because you only get so many takes or so many days of shoot. When you get everything, you'd get lost. And I still think I'm not going to name a lot of them because I don't want to create drama in
Yeah.
the comment section, but I think a lot of the filmmakers of today, their earliest work is my favorite one.
Yeah,
My
I
favorite
think
ones.
most people would agree with that. Yes.
Yeah.
So just finally, in your crystal ball that you've got there, where do you think verticals might be in, say, about 6 months or kind of beginning of 2026? What do you think might be on the
Um,
horizon?
I can tell you, I can't share much, but I can tell you that there are a lot of exciting scripts that are being written. I think that also there's going to be a space for non-vertical platforms to start getting into that space. I think that the drama box within Disney Incubator is a good also a sign of that. I think that content at home is being consumed more and more, and that there is a space for quality in that, and that it's currently emerging. It's currently in talks, in writing, in production. So I think that by the time 2026 and the 6 months of your question arrive, a lot of those will be out. Now, I think that so I know it'll exist, it'll emerge, and I'm sure it'll resonate with a big part of the audience. What I just really hope, and that's not just for verticals, but for the sake of humanity, I just hope that we try to nurture and cherish positive things more than bad ones. That goes for everything that goes viral on the internet, just in general, not just for verticals. But I think it's important to realize that even if we are victims of this capitalistic clickbait, social media, like consumerism, um, mentality and just overall, mentality and what's going on with our industry, I think it's really important to realize that us consumers have the power. If, even though it looks tempting to click on something or to watch something that's probably not good for our brain, our hearts and soul. Even though it's tempting, I think we can make somehow a conscious choice of not clicking it's just not follow Instagram account that makes you miserable, whatever the topic is. Same for everything TikTok, same for everything vertical. I think that just as human beings, that's not just a vertical thing, but I think we should try to focus more and cherish what makes us feel good instead of what in the long run can be damaging to us. So yeah, I just really hope that audiences, vertical and non-verticals, just social media in general, just when we're on our phone, let's try to be mindful of what we do, what we watch, because we're being spied and the choices we make will impact what will get made. And it can be a virtuous circle. Would you say that? Is that a word? Yeah.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
can be a
Yeah, it's a
positive.
circle. Yeah.
It can be if you
The
start
way the
working more
algorithm
positive
works, then
stuff.
you see
Yeah.
more and more of that. So I'm always a big proponent on social media of you
Yeah.
curate your space to make you
Exactly.
happy and don't worry about it. But if something is making you feel good or making you look at your own life and be dissatisfied, or you just, yeah, then that's a problem and you need to step away and
Exactly.
not be looking at it. I mean, that's what I tell my teenagers, because sometimes something's come out and you're like, okay, where has that come from? Like, that's not you. That's because you've looked at certain things that are created on social media that make you think you're missing out or you haven't got this
Yeah.
makeup or whatever. And it's like, let's just step away from that. But we need that as adults as well, of like, just think about what you're
Absolutely.
consuming, how you want to feel. So yeah.
So
This
yeah,
has
I
been
think
so much fun.
that's the one challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It was really cool. I didn't see the time fly by.
Well, we just had so much fun. That was why it's so good.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank
Um,
you.
for just sharing so much. I think this is really informative for both people as fans and also people in the industry. You're an absolute superstar and I can't thank you enough again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for, chatting with me. I think that we're not so much, and it's just everywhere, not just verticals, but we tend to focus on actors, but it's also nice that some of the crew can also share their experiences and their thoughts about the industry. And I think that fan pages like yours really create a safe space where we can talk about things and hopefully make them evolve in the right directions. You're the superstar. You literally have all of the actors who are just cherishing and reposting everything you do. So I think that it really tells that there's something going in the right direction and that you're touching onto something important here. So thank you for not only having me, but just creating the space for everyone who's interested in vertical.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.